Okay, hi everybody. It's going to be a somber edition of the Bird Brains where we're going to check out the Eagles and their frailties here recently. I do want to mention my partner is Mark Eckel, covered the Eagles for a long time for Trenton Times and NJ.com. My name's Ken Dunek, played tight end for the Eagles and Philadelphia Stars, and we talk Eagles football here every week with you. We're going to dissect the game. We're going to take a look at the rest of the season and tell you why there's still reason for hope. I do want to mention that this podcast is sponsored by Jersey Man and Philly Man magazine. Hey, our January issue is about to come out. We've got some great writers, including my partner, Mark Eckel, who has an exclusive interview with Iowa basketball coach Fran McCaffrey, who obviously has some Philadelphia ties. Dee Lynam writes about the Sixers. Dave Spadaro writes about the Eagles. And, of course, George Anastasia writes our mob scene. If you're interested in the magazine, go to jerseymanmagazine.com. You can get a subscription for $20, or you can actually read the magazine for free. I'm an older guy. I like the tactile sensation of reading a magazine, as I'm sure Mark does. So we encourage you to do that. I also want to mention that we're recording today from Sweet Recording Studios here in Mount Laurel. Our friend Joe Gangemi does a great job of engineering this podcast. And if you're interested in the podcast, reach out to Joe at Sweet Recording Studios, and he can set you up. Okay, Mark, we're going to talk a little bit about the Eagles game. And it's funny that when you and I talked about this gauntlet of games, this 5-game gauntlet that we thought were so tough, we said we thought the Eagles would probably be 3-2, and that's the way it worked out. It wasn't the way that we thought it was going to work out. And actually, the Eagles, in my opinion, are fortunate. They could have very easily been 1-4 or 0-5 in this stretch of games, but they did wind up 3-2. The concerning thing to me is they look a little bit stale lately. They've been outplayed and outcoached the last 2 games. And I'm going to go through a laundry list of some of the reasons why I think what's going on. But what are your overall impressions of not only this game, but the last 2 games, and actually how they made out in this gauntlet of 5 really tough games coming down the stretch here?
Well, 3-2 was fine. I mean, if you look at it, as you said, if you look at the big picture, they weren't going to go 5-0 against those 5. That would have been impossible.
Yeah,
it really would have been impossible. They did get some breaks against the Bills in Kansas City, and hey, good for them. They got the breaks. They won the game.
In the first Dallas game, I thought they benefited
Dallas
from a couple of replays.
They got breaks. You're right. They got breaks, and I forgot about that one. Right, they got breaks in that. Actually, there was a 6th game because Miami. You could throw Miami in that mix. That wasn't right in a row, but that was actually before the bye.
Right.
So there were 6 of them. So really 4-2 if you count the Miami game. So that's, if you look at it from that point of view, if you're an Eagle fan and you're looking at it, they went 4-2 against Miami, Buffalo, Dallas twice, Kansas City, and San Francisco. That's pretty darn good.
Right.
Now, the other side is and again, I'm going to ask you as a player this, as a former player, because writers and broadcasters and whatever, we look at things a little bit different sometimes. And I've had conversations with players about this when I covered the team all the time. But there's losses and there's losses. And again, I know a loss it doesn't matter if you lose 21-20 or 42-10. Yep. It's only one loss. But we both picked Dallas to win last week. I didn't think they were going to go to Dallas and win, but I thought it would be a good game. I thought it would be competitive. I thought it would come down where Dak would have to take Dallas down to win the game, or the Eagles would have the ball with a chance to win, and maybe Cowboys make a good defensive play and stop them. I thought in the 4th quarter I'd still be excited watching the game. I was half asleep by the 4th quarter in this game.
Well, if you're like me, I was pissed off that they had that scoop and score because I was ready to cash it in right there, and then it made me hang around for another hour, lost an hour.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and same with the 49, but that's 2 weeks in a row where they weren't in the game. The game was over before it was over. Yeah. And coming off the heels of the bad loss to San Francisco, I expected more of an effort, more of
more fire, more competitive.
Yes, they did. They came out the same way they came out. It was an extension of the 49er game where they just continued to look bad. So that, not that they lost, but how they lost concerns me way more than, like I said, going 4-2 in those 6 games. You can't be much happier than that.
Yeah, well, I can tell you from a player standpoint, when you lose a game like you did against San Francisco, and they played them tough for a while. People forget that the Eagles were up 6-0 with 7.5 minutes to go in the second quarter of that game. It got away from them at the end, but they were in it for a while. And they got beat badly in that game. And I thought going into Dallas, rivalry, they got their nose bloodied a little bit, they'd come out with more fire. They did not. I can tell you from a player's perspective that losing can be good because a lot of times when you win and you're making mistakes, you don't look at it under the microscope that you do when you lose. And obviously, the Eagles have a lot to look at these last two games. The way that you lose, however, can start to affect your confidence. If you get bloodied two games in a row like the Eagles had, and they did it against good competition, it's no disgrace. But you can start to, and the Twitter stuff with the coordinators and everything, people got to stop and take a deep breath. This team is 10-3. I think we both would agree that we would have taken that at this point in the season, being 10-3. However, there are some points of concern, and I'm going to go through them here line by line with you, and you tell me your opinion. Number one, way too many missed tackles. So when I look at, especially the Eagles linebackers and safeties, when Blankenship's out of the game, their safeties don't tackle. Though I do think Brown played okay in that game, but Witherspoon, Byard, Morrow, I think Ringo was the guy that put his head down and let the Dallas tight end jump right over him.
He's the guy that got 2 penalties on one play.
And poor tackling fundamentals. Now, I get it. They're mandated that they can't hit in practice anymore. So the art of tackling is really a lost art. It's hard to turn it on and off. Others seem to be able to do it, but for whatever reason, the Eagles are missing way too many tackles, and it's happened more lately than it did early on in the season.
Yeah, I've never liked the back seven of this defense. I just don't. I mean, the corners they're not as good as
okay. They're
okay.
Corners are marginal. I mean, listen, Slay is good, and Bradbury's okay, in my opinion. They're serviceable corners.
Slay's not as good as he was.
I agree.
And Bradbury isn't as good as he was last year.
Right.
But they're not. They could use help.
They're not the problem.
But they're not the solution either.
No.
The safeties are not good. Blankenship's a good player. He plays hard. He's all over the place.
Good player. He's a good hitter. He lacks coverage skills, but he's a good player.
But their safeties, the rest of them, I'm not. I think Brown will be good. I really do. I liked him when they drafted him. He probably should. He's starting to get a little more time now. But yeah, and the linebackers, I don't know. I'm just not. I didn't like any of them.
Well, they never value the linebackers. We've talked about it for years.
When you don't draft them early and you let them come and go every year, it's what are you gonna this is what you have. But so yeah, I'm not big on the back seven. And so the front four for the Eagle defense to look good, the front four has to dominate. And for the most part, they have, but lately they haven't. And this is when you give up 30-some points, 40-some points.
Well, I'm going to give you a stat later on this list that's really going to shock you. But I think Byard's been a disappointment.
Yes.
I think that, this defensive philosophy is, again, play cover two, which makes you susceptible to the run, which also leaves the middle of the field wide open. And if you don't have linebackers that really can't cover, and that's my next point, poor coverage, especially in the middle of the field. These linebackers cannot handle these backs and tight ends on a one-on-one in the middle of the field. They're so wide open. And again, it looks like a conservative approach by Desai, the defensive coordinator, rarely blitzes, okay, and leaving the middle of the field open, trying not to get beat by the big play. But these teams are systematically going down the field with big chunks of yards against us, and something's got to change there.
Yeah, like I said, that's going back to what I said. I don't. The front four has to dominate. I mean, and it's a good front four. I mean, with Reddick and Graham and Fletcher Cox playing pretty well this year. The Carter and Davis, the kids, the front's good. But if I'm an offensive coordinator and I'm game planning against the Eagles defense, all week I'm saying, listen, we're going to keep an extra guy in. We're going to do whatever we can to negate that pass rush of those guys. We're going to double whoever. We're going to chip the other guy. We're going to do all we can. And the quarterback, get rid of the ball quick. You're going to have guys open. So just, 2-step, 3-step drop, get rid of it. Look over. And like you said, the middle of the field is going to be open. We don't have to go deep. They're not letting us go deep anyway. So we don't need the time to throw 40 yards downfield. We'll take the little 8-yard cross and hopefully, and break a tackle, 8 yards turns into 20 yards.
Listen, when's the last time the Eagles? I mean, is Seth Joyner the last great linebacker that the Eagles had? And what was that, 20 some
Trotter.
years ago?
Trotter was after him.
Oh, Trotter was okay. That's right.
Trotter was pretty good.
A couple years after, but I mean, Reddick is technically an offensive or defensive linebacker, outside linebacker.
He's not a linebacker. He's a
But well, I mean, they switched from this 4-3 to 3-4 on and off, so it's hard to tell really what position he is. But to me, the defense looks a little bit tired and lost. They have played a lot of snaps recently. Reddick is really the only guy that's a rushing threat right now. I'm going to tell you something about Eagles defense.
I don't mind Sweat.
Well, yeah, Sweat, but I mean, I'm talking from a consistent basis. Reddick seems to be the guy that's always there. Now, let me give you a stat that is going to shock you.
All right.
The Eagles defense, third down sacks, 6.3%, last in the NFL.
Wow.
Now, that tells you something, right?
That tells you what the offensive coordinators are doing. What I'm saying, yeah. Just give them time. We don't have to.
So people talk about this Eagles defensive front, and I do think they're good, but if the front four are not going to get pressure on the quarterback, then you have to blitz. You have to do something to knock the quarterback off of his spot.
Who are you going to blitz?
Well, you might as well blitz one of the linebackers. They can't cover a tackle anyway. What's the difference?
They probably can't blitz either, though.
Well, let's give it a try. Hey, how about drop passes? I thought Brown and Smith each dropped a couple of catchable balls the other night, and
both fumbled as well.
Yeah, and the fumbles. You can't. We'll talk about turnovers in a second, but the drop passes when Hurts is putting it in spots where they could actually make those catches. So. To me, that's disappointing. We lost a turnover battle again. Your top three players on offense, Hurts, Smith, and Brown, all lost fumbles in that game. And Mark, it's cliche, but you can't lose the turnover battle in NFL games and expect to win the game. It's just not going to happen. You've got to secure the football.
Not against a good team and not on the road. And they were playing a good team on the road. Yeah, you turned the ball over 3 times, and I think we're all 3 in Cowboy territory?
I don't remember.
No, Hurts
I'd have to look up.
Yeah. Hurts, they were about to score when he fumbled.
Yeah.
So I think the other ones were too. I mean, they left a lot of points out on the field that game. I mean, they just it was a bad game. It was to me, this loss was worse than San Francisco's in a sense because, like you said, San Francisco that just snowballed on them. It just got,
yes.
The first quarter they absolutely dominated. I thought they were going to, but they were only up 6-0. That's what scared me. It should have been 14 or at least 10. This game, they just, like I said, they just came out, and I really expected a good game. Like I said, I didn't think they were going to win, but I thought this was going to be a fun game, a good back and forth, a lot of good plays. Now there were a lot of good plays, but they were all by the Cowboys.
Hurts had another mediocre performance, in my opinion, 18 for 27, 197 yards, no touchdowns, of course. Outplayed by Dak Prescott, who was 24 for 39, 271 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. I'm going to tell you another shocking statistic that you may not have realized, probably didn't, that Jalen Hurts has the second worst quarterback rating in the NFL on first and second down. Which leads me to believe that when defenses don't have the game plan for him running as much as they used to, because to me, he still looks like he's not healthy. Looks like he's dragging that leg a little bit. And that makes them tighten down on the coverage because they don't have to take a guy out of coverage to spy on him. I think that's obviously that stat is eye-opening. I think it's affecting the offense certainly on early downs.
Yeah, that shocks me more than the other one. That he's second worst.
Second worst in the NFL quarterback rating on first and second down.
There's a lot of bad quarterbacks in this league.
Yes, and they're all playing because all the good ones are getting hurt.
There's a lot of. So if he's second worst, I don't know who the worst is, but that means there's a lot of bad ones better than him. So that's not good at all. Wow. There's a story came out earlier in the week too. Derek Gunn reported some players told him, he didn't name names, but some players said that the offense is too predictable.
I heard that.
Too simple.
Mm-hmm.
He compared it, and the player went on to say, look what Dak is doing, and look what the Cowboys receivers are doing, and then look at the routes that our guys run.
You don't want to know what Dak is doing in 2 games against the Eagles: 53 completions, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions.
Yeah, that's just against the Eagles. Look what
Right.
he's done against some other teams too. But that's an indictment of not just Sirianni, but his offensive staff, that they're not putting players. They're not players can only run the routes they're told to run. They're not
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to freelance. They're not going to players don't they're not going to draw up plays in the dirt too often. So yeah, this is starting to. And
Well,
this is what happens when you never played on any losing teams. You played on nothing but
yeah,
championship teams. But maybe at Memphis you might have had a couple losses. But
we did. We'd have many losses in Memphis.
so, but when teams start losing, things like this start coming out, and that's not good either.
Well, again, if you learn from the losses and learn from your mistakes, I don't like the fact that stuff is starting to leak out of the locker
That's what I'm
room.
saying.
I mean,
If the players are going to
that's not a
Derek
good
and
sign.
saying things like we're too simplistic, that's when it starts to fall apart on you.
Well,
This game this week can't be. This is so big.
It is a big game, and it's
on
certainly
the
a
road.
winnable game. I want to finish up with some stats on this last game. First downs, Dallas out first downed us, if that's a term, 24-17. On third down, they were 56%. We were only 44%. Net yards, 394 to 324. Again, we had 10 penalties for 95 yards. And here, I'm going to stop here. Let me finish. Red zone, 0 for 1. Dallas was 3 for 3. Time of possession, which we said isn't always an indicator. In this case, it was 23 and 24 seconds for the Birds, 36-36 for Dallas. What about on Dallas's first touchdown pass, the referee picks up that flag, which to me looked like an obvious hold, and they actually went back to it a few plays later. And the explanation was that there was separation. And you got to explain that to me, because there wasn't separation, fouls or no fouls, when I played football. Either you held or you didn't.
Or you didn't.
And why would you throw a flag?
Right, don't throw it.
And then be convinced to pick it up without the benefit of the replay, unless somebody's in their ear telling them to pick up the flag. To me, I thought it was questionable.
Yeah, and that didn't matter. I mean, that's not why they lost, but I've seen that for years. There is no foul on that play, and then why'd you throw the flag?
Why'd you throw the flag? Right.
Unless the only time I could see it is on like you thought there were 12 men, but somebody said no, he did get off in time.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that, where the other ref saw something that you didn't like. I'll compare it more to baseball when the home plate ump checks with the first base ump to see if the guy swung.
Yeah.
He says no, he didn't, or yes, he did. Whatever. Okay, maybe he had a better view, but the guy, every ref on the field is responsible for a certain area, right? I mean, you got the back judge who looks at what's going on a pass interference and those kind of things.
Yeah.
Other guys, so whoever threw the flag, he saw something, or he wouldn't have thrown it.
Exactly. Hey, just to digress for a second, how about the Mahomes play where the guy obviously, I think it was Ward, lines up obviously offside.
Tony.
If you're, who was it? Tony?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So he's obviously offside. The refs call it, which they pretty much have to do. I mean, especially since the receiver didn't look at the ref and say, "Am I okay?" And the ref would have said, "No, you need to back up." He never bothered to do that. And I love the way Mahomes and Andy Reid, surprisingly, who's not a guy prone to do that, were whining after the game. But all I could think about was, were you whining on that marginal Super Bowl call with the holding in the end zone? I mean, come on, you can't have it both ways, right?
Now that's another team that losing some games they're not used to losing, and now the frustrations are coming out.
Another new offensive coordinator too.
Yep.
So that may not be a coincidence.
Go ahead.
Well, I just want to, as we look at the schedule moving forward, now let's talk about
big.
Yeah, at Seattle, which is, you said that the Eagles have never beaten Pete Carroll, which I found interesting. But cross country trip, tough place to play, tough place to hear, your signals, and I really think that it's important that the Eagles get right. If you look at their last three games, the Giants at home, who are actually playing a little bit better lately. They beat Green
I'll
Bay
be
at
tough.
home,
I'll be tough.
Arizona, and then at the New York Giants. But let's take the Seattle game first. I have not heard. I think Geno Smith is listed as questionable for this game. I haven't heard
Right.
definitively if
It
he's going to
looks like
play or
he's
not,
going to play, but it's
and that's
along
a
with.
big deal.
Oh yeah. If Smith plays, I mean they got. You talk about weapons, Metcalf, Lockett, and Noah Font.
Yeah.
That's three pretty good resets. If they're not covering, they're going to be in trouble. I
Yeah.
mean, Gino will get the ball out quickly, and Lockett and Metcalf can do damage. And Font over the middle, he's a beast as a tight end over the middle. I mean, he's not going to get you 50, but he's going to get you those 8, 10 yards. And if you don't tackle him, guess what? He's going to break. He's going to go for more as well. So the secondary, the linebackers, and the pass defense is going to be tested. I mean, let's just look again. And I hate comparing things like this, but Seattle and the Eagles played the same two teams the last two games, Dallas and San Francisco.
Yeah.
Seattle gave Dallas all they could handle on a Thursday night.
Mm-hmm.
That was a great game. That was a fun game, good game. The Eagles played Dallas. It wasn't a good game. Seattle played San Fran last week. San Fran pulled away at the end, but it was a much better game. So
no,
I mean,
Seattle's no slouch. This is not a
and they're
walkover
desperate.
win. Yeah,
And they're a desperate team now. They've lost. They looked like an easy wild card at a couple of weeks ago. They were 6-2, 6-3, whatever they were. They
I
looked
think
like
I think it started out 6-2 or 3. Yeah,
yeah. Now they're 6-7.
yeah.
So they're like right now they're not in the playoffs. So this is if they lose this week, they're in a lot of trouble. They would have to win out, which means beating San Fran again. I think they play San Fran again. So and they've already lost twice to the Rams, so they lose that tiebreaker. This is a must win for Seattle. This is their season. If they don't win this game, they're probably not going to the postseason. So
And that's
it's all
always
on
a
the line for them.
dangerous situation for a
And
team.
Pete Carroll's a good guy. Listen, Pete Carroll, I have all the respect in the world for Pete Carroll. I think he's underrated, and I think he's still one of the best coaches in the game. So he'll have this team ready.
Carl Smith, who was the Stars quarterbacks coach, offensive coordinator for a while, he coached for years with Pete Carroll, and he raves about Carroll. He thinks he's just a tremendous football coach. I think that the Eagles is going to be very difficult for them to be the number one seed in the NFC right now. If they can take these last four games at 4-0 and 3-1, depending on what Dallas does. Now, Dallas has a rigorous schedule. They're at the Bills, they're home against the Dolphins, they're home against the Lions, and then they've got an easy one, which should be an easy one at Washington, to finish the season. So, I can see Dallas slipping and the Eagles moving into that second slot if they play well. But San Francisco's, it's kind of a joke. I mean, they're at Arizona. They do have Baltimore, but they have them at home. They're at Washington, and then the Rams. So they have a very easy schedule. I don't think as easy as the Eagles, but certainly easier than Dallas. So to me, the Eagles are looking to be slotted in that, hopefully that number 2 seed in the NFC when it all comes down to it.
If they beat Seattle, they lose to Seattle, they could wind up being the 5 seed.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if they lose to Seattle and Dallas, I think if they both go 3-1, Dallas beats them because that common opponent, Dallas beat Seattle, Eagles would have lost to Seattle, everything else would be the same. That's what I'm saying. This game is the biggest one. This is big. And it's in Seattle. Like I said, they're gonna have to. This is where Nick Sirianni earns his money. He's gonna have to coach his butt off because I don't think he's been very good the last 2 weeks either.
No, you know what? How about his demeanor on the sideline last week? He almost looked like he didn't feel well or had the flu or so. He was very gaunt and white with dark circles under his eyes. Listen, I get it. Everybody's tired at this point in the season, but and to his credit, I think he lets his coordinators call the game, and he's basically, a manager at that point. But he just looked off to me. And am I seeing things, or did you see the same thing on the
No, he didn't
sideline?
look him. Yeah, he always looks kind of goofy to me, but I'm
Yeah, but
serious.
he normally has the visor on with the pen in
Yeah,
there, and he was
I
like,
think he
no
misses
hat.
Big Dom. I think Big
Yeah,
Dom's not there to.
yeah, that's right. That could be the whole thing. Big Dom.
Maybe we're going to find out. This is all going to come out in my next book in about 5 years. Big Dom was the one running the show.
Yeah.
He was really calling plays. He was running the defense.
Well,
Because since Big Dom's been thrown out, they've been really bad.
hey, listen, that's not really that far fetched because Big Dom does way more than just protect Sirianni on game day. This guy goes and picks up these players at the airport. When Lane Johnson had that incident a few years ago and he bugged it out to Oklahoma, Big Dom is the guy that went out there and sat with him for a few days, and got his head back right. So, he's actually a valuable member of the Eagles staff, and he does much more than just security. But,
I think he calls the defense.
well, if he calls a defense, he'll get him to blitz more. Do me
Well,
a favor.
he wanted to. He wasn't there. He couldn't.
If you have an in over there, get a hold of Big Dom and tell him to
I'm
blitz.
not sure he's allowed to do that anymore. That's the thing. Have we heard? Is he allowed to be back on the sideline yet?
I think he's suspended for
the rest of the year.
For I don't know if it's the rest of the year, but they said that for the time being, he's no longer on the Eagles sideline, and we'll see if that happens for the rest of the year. They come off of that, but anyway, listen. Here's the bottom line with this Eagles message this week is that I'm a little bit uncomfortable with the way they're playing lately. However, again, looking at the big picture, 10-3, this point of the season, we would have taken it. We've got a favorable schedule. I think we can go at least 3 out of 4 to finish the season, maybe grab that number 2 slot. And, getting back to the Super Bowl, you might have to go through San Francisco, but it's a one-game tournament and anything can happen. So still reason for optimism. I want you to tune in next week to the Bird Brains with Ken and Mark, and we're going to give you hopefully a much better report. It's a Monday night game, so we'll probably do it later in the week, and hopefully we'll have some good news for everybody. For my partner, Mark Eckel, this is Ken Dunek. Thanks, everybody, for listening to the Bird Brains, and we'll talk to you next week after an Eagles victory. Take care.